Hey, everybody. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York, but love the Cubs nonetheless. And we probably weren't going to do a podcast this week, but here we are because we have some news that you all have heard. But first, I'm Adam Amawala. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey, who is in the Chicago area,
I
but
am.
still lives in New York.
I still live in New York for now, yes, but I'm briefly. I was called home by the news of the day. Just had to get to Chicago. I mean, it's been a 2 years of just nothing but Cubs goodbyes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've said, and the hellos we've been saying have been to people we typically don't care about or won't see for many years, except for Marcus Stroman here or there. But yeah, the big news today is that our good friend Jon Lester has retired.
Now, does that surprise you? I will say that I was neither surprised nor not surprised when I heard the news. Like, I could have seen it either way, where it makes sense that he's retiring, especially after getting that 200th win and really doing just about anything that a person could do in baseball. But I still think he probably could have pitched for another few seasons and been productive.
Yeah, he probably could have done another season. I mean, he was better. It's weird that he was with the Cardinals at all last year, but he was better with the Cardinals than he was with the Nationals before that to begin the season. He closed the year, with the Cardinals. He had 12 starts, pitching to a 4.36 ERA, which, that can get a contract for sure. And I'm sure it's probably a thing where he maybe would have had to wait a little longer into spring training, or even if there's going to be a spring training, because him announcing his retirement today, and as we record this, it's January 12th, I think. Is that correct? Who cares what day it is? Does it even matter for anybody? But I think part of him announcing it at this moment instead of at the end of the season or instead of later is, I wonder if he was sort of waffling on it, and then seeing where that fucking baseball and the commissioner and the players haven't even been talking until the news is that they now plan to talk. They've literally taken more time off work than people who actually have COVID are even allowed to take off work now.
They're planning on entertaining the idea of circling back about talking, is what I've heard.
Yes, that's a perfect office speak way to put it too. And I honestly think maybe part of it is Lester looking at that landscape and being like, look, I'm old. I don't want to hang around and stay in game shape for possibly no baseball when I'm at the end of it anyway. And, Lester he wouldn't be taking a contract with a team that wasn't distinctly a winner, Mm-hmm. The last time he accepted a contract with a team that wasn't supposed to be a winner was the Cubs, right? In 2015.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, but he was sold on it with the vision of this team will become a winner and you will be part of that. But your point is well taken. There was no scenario in which Jon Lester and his family were like, hey, we really need the extra $6 million. Let me go pitch for the Royals for a year.
Exactly. So, I mean, he would have been a back end starting pitcher, possibly sort of a filling guy on and looking for a highly competitive team. And so, yeah, I think when you say it's neither surprising nor it's both surprising and unsurprising, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, it makes sense because you look at everything logistically and it seems like, all right, yeah, it would be asking a lot to come back next year, although he could absolutely do it and be a fine pitcher for the year,
Right. I think it also speaks to the weirdness of the last few years in terms of just our ability to feel time. Mm-hmm. That Lester only spent one season not on the Cubs at the end of his career.
Yeah.
The Nationals Cardinals thing feels like a much longer period of time, but it wasn't.
That's very well put, because that does not seem correct to me either.
Yeah. It seems like forever since we were watching him on the Cubs, but I guess part of that is that 2020 we didn't get to watch with any fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that you have to consider is that Lester is someone who is so prideful and who during his entire career, even when he was at his best, you could see him just agonizing over not being at his best at any given moment. I don't think he would have been the sort of person who would have been comfortable being like a fifth starter, long relief. It just wasn't going to happen in the same way that I don't think it's likely that we're going to see LeBron James in 5 years being like, sure, I'll come off the bench for 10 minutes a game. I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I totally agree with that too. He would not have any interest. And I couldn't see him pitching out of the bullpen. Like
Right.
he's sort of one of those old
He's not going to
school.
be Oliver Perez.
Right. And I mean, he's a guy who probably could, I mean, he could probably go Jesse Orosco deep if he's just facing an inning, if he's going out there to throw an inning against two out of three lefties, like,
Right.
yeah, he could probably do that for a while, but I think he's going to go, as you alluded to, at Away Games Pod on our Twitter. I think he's going to go drink some Bud Heavies and do some hunting and do some hunting and drunk fishing instead. And I think that sounds like a wonderful plan for him.
Yeah. So now let's kind of go back here. I'm sure we've talked about it before, but where were you the day that Jon Lester signed?
I was in Northwest Astoria, Northwest Queens. I was living at a place at the corner of 21st Street and 21st Avenue, to be specific, which tells you how messed up Queens address systems are. There was a guy whose address was almost identically ours who would come over mad with our mail all the time and yell at us like, "Stop sending me your mail." And it's like, "It's not us, buddy. The address is correct." So I was
For reference, Astoria is a place where for no reason there will be an intersection of like 21st Street, 21st Road, and 21st Place, and no one
Yes.
has any idea what any of those things mean.
Nope. So I was there and I was up late and I was doing the thing where I kept like looking at Twitter and kept like
Mhm.
refreshing it because we had heard reports that Lester was very close to making a decision. We heard that I think like Buster Posey made a house call to try to convince him
Yeah.
to come to San Francisco. So we knew there was San Francisco heavy in the mix. I think Atlanta might have been mentioned too at the time, and then we didn't know what was up with the Red Sox as far as were they going to try to make a return pitch to him after lowballing him, and I was just sort of refreshing it, like, are we actually going to get a big guy? Like, because it had been a
Right.
long time. It felt like it had been a really long time since we got an A-level free agent. So I was just in bed refreshing Twitter, and it happened deep into the night.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that about him potentially going back to the Red Sox, and frankly, when I think about that, it makes me feel not super optimistic about the Cubs ever again re-signing any of the players that they lowballed or traded in a unceremonious fashion. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's very much the your ex is like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't appreciate you then, but like want
Mm-hmm.
to get back together now. And it's like, well, I don't really know why I would trust that anything would be different. Um,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, I've talked about this before, but I was at big scare quotes on at, but at the winter meetings in
Mm-hmm.
San Diego. I was in LA to do some shows, and I'd gone down to San Diego for the day to do a show down there. And it wasn't even planned, but I think once I had the trip planned and knew that the winter meetings would be down there, I was like, well, if I'm in San Diego, it would be silly for me to not at least not like walk through the lobby and just see what's going on. I didn't see anyone of any import, but I remember it was one of those times where since I was 3 hours behind you, I was on the West Coast, and I assume the news must have broken around like midnight or shortly thereafter on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
I had my phone on airplane mode while I was on stage, and then came outside, turned it back on, and saw like 12 texts from I'm sure you and a number of other people, and being like, "Oh wow, this is like I think this team could actually be possibly okay." Like I didn't
Right.
think they'd win 95 or 97 games, but to have already brought in Epstein and then to have brought in Madden and then Lester, it started to feel like for the first time in I don't know a decade that they were doing something strategically that made sense to me and that I was
Yeah.
happy about.
I mean, since 2008, probably, right? Was
Yeah,
the first time they were acting like winners or people who wanted to be winners, and that was adding an ace to what the top package of prospects, the top farm system in Major League Baseball.
right.
So this is, I mean, the Cubs just added Marcus Stroman to the roster now, and that's adding an ace, that's adding a number one to a team. The difference is we don't have the number one farm system in baseball right now, but we did
Mhm.
then, and it was very position player heavy. So it was a way where okay, we have all these young guys who we really believe in, we're really excited about on the way up, but getting a two-time World Series winner who you could make an argument is one of, if not the best postseason pitcher of all time. Jon
Mhm.
Lester has the record for most game ones started in postseason play, which is it's a little arbitrary because obviously playoffs have expanded, but it really tells you what his teams think of him, right? Like sending the guy
Right.
out to pitch game one in a playoff series, it's hard to find a stronger definition of what a quote unquote ace is. And that's Jon Lester. And he always came through in the playoffs. So adding a guy who knew how to win, had a couple World Series titles, had pitched in, Boston might be the most similar to the Cubs market in terms of fan base, in terms of, the intensity of the media scrutiny and all that stuff. So it just seemed like such a perfect addition. And it was sort of, I don't know if flattering is the right word, but I remember being surprised. Like he chose us, like
Right.
cool. It just seemed kind of surprising. Like, okay, Jon Lester thinks we're cool, so we're probably actually cool. We're probably for real going to be good. And I mean, that was also sort of like peak Theo magic time.
Right. Yeah, and it was I don't know exactly what his WAR was that season. I'm sure it was pretty good, but like it was one of those moves that in that one stroke of a pen, you go from being like, I don't really know what this team is going to be this year to being like, oh, I think that completely changes the radius of what we might be. Like, and it's
Yeah.
not completely dissimilar from the Stroman signing, and that like, I think certainly there was more negativity a couple months ago, and the Cubs have won a World Series,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a move that's like things are moving in the right direction, and I think that this means that we might actually be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, in 2015, Lester, and only seeing the stats now, am I remembering this? But I remember what hard luck he pitched to
Mhm.
in that season and how frustrating it was. And he finished for a 97 win team. He was 11-12. To
Oh
tell
my
you
God.
about how pitcher wins work sometimes. He was 11-12. And by the way, the next year he led Major League Baseball in winning percentage with going 19-5 with the 792 in 2016. But in 2015, he went 11-12 with a 3.34 ERA. So 205 innings pitched, absolute old school workhorse, 207 strikeouts. Uh, and that was his 2015. And just looking at the starts he made, starting in 2015, 32, 32, 32, 32, 31. I mean, it's just, and then in 2020, he made 12 starts, in
Right.
the shortened year. So, I mean, they signed this guy and he made every friggin' start for this team functionally over the course of his deal. And in the midst of that, 2016, he had the runner-up Cy Young. He was number 2 in Cy Young voting that year. That's when he went 19-5 with the 2.44 ERA for the champion Cubs, obviously. Um, but yeah, so in terms of WAR, I don't have WAR on me right now, but like he was
Yeah.
he was good right away for a very good team.
Yeah, and I remember him struggling like a little bit out of the gate. I want to say that his first start was that like that disastrous Sunday night baseball game at Wrigley where people were like peeing in cups
I
because
was
they did
there.
not have. You were there?
Yes, I was there at
Oh, I
that
don't think I knew that. Yeah.
against the Cardinals. Yeah. Yeah, I was there with my mom and my it was me, my mom, my brothers, and I think it was also Joe Madden's first game, right? Like
Right.
in 2015. So Madden and Lester definitely got the biggest pops out of everybody doing, because on opening day they
Hmm.
do the start, like sort of almost like they do in the All-Star game where they announce everybody and they stand out
Right.
on the foul line and stuff. But yeah, it was an absolute, quite literal shit show, more of a piss show, I suppose. But in terms of
Talk
how,
about snake cups.
yeah, there's your snake cup. Yeah. So, he sort of went out there and was kind of hard lucked in that first game, and
Right.
yeah.
It's kind of funny thinking about that kind of strange part of 2015 where the bleachers were just not done. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of perfectly representative of what the team was, which is like
It really
we're
was.
not quite there, but we are so fucking close and it's going to be glorious when it's done.
Yes, we're really excited about the prospect of it being
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Um, Yeah, I mean, so where you asked me where I was refreshing the Twitter in my bed while my wife was
Mhm.
asleep. What were you doing? Do you remember when you found out? And maybe it was next morning, but when you found out Lester was coming over?
Oh, that was no, I was in San Diego.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you said that. That was then. We got to go back to the winter meetings, man, because the year I was at the winter meetings in
Yeah,
Nashville, I was there the
Zobrist,
day
right?
that Zobrist was signed as well. We have good luck there.
Yeah, and I was making out with Ben Zobrist's wife.
Now that would be a fun heel turn at this point, a few years into the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Adam Mamawala is here to steal yo girl.
I'm quite confident there has never been a pastor named Adam Amawal.
I also feel fairly confident about that. Have you ever met another Adam Mamawala, or have you been aware of another Adam Mamawala in your life?
No, there are a handful of Mamawalas, all of whom I think are related to me in some
Sure.
way. It's a very uncommon name. I think we had looked it up, and for a while, I think we were the only Mamawalas in the United States.
That's pretty good.
Not a
There's
pastor among us.
no, absolutely not.
Maybe an imam somewhere, but
We should get Imam Adam on as a guest during the lockout. Yeah, so we've got so just running down. Let me give you Lester's career stats here, which is important, I think. In obviously the guy's more than stats, but it's important in terms of his Hall of Fame case because we talked about this a few weeks ago. And we were not talking about this because we thought Lester was on the verge of retiring necessarily, but we were talking about what Cubs from 2016 might make the Hall of Fame. And at this point, we were saying weeks ago, Lester's really the one that has the strongest case at this point
yeah.
from that 2016 team. So he finishes his career with exactly 200 wins. So thank God he got that because it felt like he was going to get it easy. And then he did miss some starts last year. Still made 28 starts in his age 37.
May the team for which he got it be stricken from the record forever.
Yeah. Who knows? There's no way of knowing what team that was. But he landed exactly on 200 wins, 117 losses. So that's a winning percentage of 631. ERA of 3.66 for his career. Dude made 452 starts, 451 starts, pitched in 452 games in the regular season. We obviously know one of his relief appearances was pretty famous at the end of 2016. 15 complete games, 4 shutouts, got almost 3,000 innings, 2,488 strikeouts in his career, and career ERA plus of 17% better than league average. That's 117. So
did he throw a no hitter with the Red Sox?
I believe so, right? Didn't
I think so, right?
I think Lester had a no hitter. I will double check that as well. But yeah, and then as we know in the playoffs, I mean, there's rarely been a better playoff pitcher.
Yeah.
Do you have? Maybe we should talk just some signature Jon Lester moments. Name a favorite Jon Lester moment that comes to mind as you think about him now.
So I think it's only right that we kind of go through his postseason performances, and it should go without saying that for me the signature moment is Game 5 of the World Series, as it is for most people. But the fact that I was there, especially like sitting where I was in the bleachers and watching him warm up with Ross, and whatever was in the air that night was very special. But I enjoyed watching him hit. I know that's silly, but
Yeah.
I had a long running argument with my friend Scott, who is a big Red Sox fan and never really had to see Lester hit, who would make fun of me for defending Lester when he still had not gotten a hit by saying like he looks hitterish up there. I don't know
Right.
what to tell you other than like he doesn't look bad at the plate. I know he's 0 for his first 64 or whatever
Yeah,
it was, but
64, just a
yeah.
slump, just hitting it in the wrong places. They're shifting on him.
Exactly. It's a hard 0 for 64.
Yes.
But he did end up being kind of a decent hitter at least, and
He had an
he
Oppo
hit a
bomb.
couple. Yeah, exactly. Somehow like left center was his power alley for reasons that still don't make sense to me. I think it's the golf swing really is what contributed
Yes.
to it. But
He did throw a no-hitter in 2008, by the way.
there you go.
We can confirm. So that's one of the little boxes to check off for the Hall of Fame
Right.
plaque,
And I mean, it should go without saying that he'll go into the Hall of Fame as an Oakland Athletic.
Yep, an Oakland A, if not a Washington National, and then maybe just split the hat in all those different ways. Yeah, I think it is funny because watching him, because I believe he had sort of a record 0 for streak, which I believe is now I think it's been broken, but he was over however many. And yeah, he went up there. He was steady in the box, not a lot of wasted movement. Maybe he just couldn't be bothered, but he would take
Right.
hard cuts. And yeah, it was fun when he ended up getting that hit. And then he put a couple into the bleachers. So I mean, I think we ended up being right. But you do sound like an insane. We sound like the fans who are in Major League, like when it's four of them in the bleachers and they're wearing like the headdresses and stuff, where they're just trying to talk themselves into the team being good. You sound insane when a guy's over 64. Certainly. It's like, but he's taking good cuts. I mean, he's due. He's going to go 3 for 4 pretty soon and straighten this thing out. Yeah, I think that, and in terms of him at the plate, obviously, I think one of the better, one of the more like fun signature Jon Lester weirdo moments was that comeback game against the Mariners when Jon Lester laid down a bunt in extra innings to complete what was, I believe, a comeback from down 6-0 in the first. Is that right?
Yep. After future Cubs Steve Cishek got a little wild in the ninth.
He got a little crazy. Yeah, that's right. The Brian Matthews game, who started that one.
Footnote.
Yeah, he got to start that day. I was all about it too. I was a believer in him.
Does that mean he got a ring?
I mean, was that 16? Yeah, that was 16, right? Yeah, I mean, well, because the 2016 Cubs set a record at the time for because who gets a World Series share, who gets like playoff shares money wise, and who gets rings. That's a vote of the players, at least the share is. And the Cubs, those 2016 Cubs, set a record for spreading the wealth out the most. They gave the most shares out, so he could have a ring. That's those based socialist Cubs trying to get just get everybody involved. But yeah, that was such a fun signature win too, because it was so anti-Cubs that we knew, to go from hopeless to supremely hopeful.
Right. Yeah, that was one of those signature moments that year where you were like, this team is different and this team is special. And it's easy to think of those in retrospect because there are plenty of those games. You look at the David Bodie game and then that team doesn't go anywhere. But like, there are those moments during a season where you're like, this is going to be one of the ones we remember, and it certainly is. That and I mean, in terms of other non-obvious Lester moments, him picking off a runner at first, literally as Tim McCarver says that he won't throw to first, has to be up there.
Yes, it just an incredible bit of fun. I love how many weird things have seemed to happen during daytime Cubs-Cardinals games at Wrigley in the past few years. I mean, you think of that. You think of the Taylor Davis Grand Slam to help that come back. Kyle Schwarber opposite field grand slam during a time when he
the
simply
Rizzo
could not hit.
Home run.
They're just a lot of fun moments that way, and Lester getting the pick off and then staring them down, and then obviously almost a connected moment to that. At the Cubs convention the next year when Wilson Contreras was giving his own oral history of the play that happened. I think he said, throw the fucking ball, motherfucker. Like, pick him off. You get I just love Wilson Contreras yelling at Jon Lester, like, why don't you do this? Like Wilson, like he's not a baseball player. Like, he's in the stands. He's like, he's right there. Throw the fucking ball. And it worked,
I also think it's funny that in those sorts of settings, like if you don't speak English as a first language, you get a swearing exemption.
I think so too. Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's sort of a verbal pause, and it's we allow it, and it's great. And it's fun just to watching that clip, watching like Hayward react to it, to Wilson cussing everybody out. And I loved how Lester brought Contreras along and how Contreras pushed Lester, because obviously we all know the David Ross, Jon Lester connection, where Ross was his personal catcher in Boston for a bit. And then, current Cubs manager David Ross was basically brought to Chicago because Lester was.
Side note, I think Jon Lester is up there for me with the least likely people to ever do Dancing with the Stars.
Oh yeah, Lester is not even going to appear on your Dancing with the Stars in like an interview segment. He might zoom in, but he's not. You're not getting him in person for sure. Yeah.
Listen, he'll do a square dance if he's out with his wife, but he's not going to go on TV.
No, and if he catches anyone recording it on the phone, he's breaking the phone. You're not getting out with that. But yeah, I think like Lester, the Lester Ross connection obviously was a cool one, and Ross was the old man in that combination. He was the veteran who worked with a younger Lester in Boston. And then Lester kind of got to flip that around and be the veteran voice on those Cubs teams, and working with Wilson specifically. And those two guys pushing each other, I think, was a really cool thing. And how many times Lester's gone out of his way to say how much he believes in Wilson and how much he enjoyed working with him, I think is cool. And Lester's such a guy where he's not going to say something if he doesn't really mean it too.
Right. Not to mention the Rizzo connection. I mean, I feel like that's one of the coolest stories of his time with the Cubs is both as cancer survivors, and the fact that Lester spoke to Rizzo when he was, what, 18, 17, 18
Mm-hmm.
years old,
Mm-hmm.
and a member of the Red Sox organization, like as he had found out what his diagnosis was. And you can see that when they embrace after the Cubs win the World Series, there's something different about the way that the two of them connect with each other.
I think that's absolutely true, and it's hard to come up with a comparison that's more of a direct link than those two guys. I mean, both cancer survivors, both came up with these these historic franchises that itching for a World Series title. Lester was there after the Red Sox '04 had already happened, but and then getting and then the team that raised them does not lock them down, and then it's
Right.
now we're at a point where it's like, is Rizzo going to have a second chapter in his career with another team that's going to love him like we did? um yeah, but
Do you think he would go in as a Red Sox or a Cub if he gets to the Hall of Fame?
it's a good question, and my first instinct would be Red Sox, because he won 2 World Series there. He threw his no hitter there. That's where he came up. But also, I feel like he was more. I don't even know how to articulate it, but I feel like he was more of a leading man in Chicago. Like he
Right.
was, even though he won 1 World Series in Chicago versus the 2 in Boston, he I mean, he was a crucial starter in Boston too, but he was sort
Right.
of the man, in
Mhm.
the Cubs clubhouse to some degree. So I think you can make a very good case for Chicago too. I mean, straight up by the years, Lester came up in Boston, and then he was there from '06 to halfway through 2014. So he was there for more years. So I think he probably goes in Boston, but I think you can make a really good case either way. It's a
Right.
little bit Andre Dawson.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, when you think about the 2016 postseason, really, other than Game One of the World Series, there was no period at which Lester was not in complete control. I mean, you go game by game, and in that
Mm-hmm.
first game, there are a lot of things that people kind of forget about. But in Game One against the Giants, Javi hitting a home run doesn't mean anything unless the game is still 0-0 at that point,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So you see Lester in like completely dominant in that
Mm-hmm.
game. You go to the next round, and Lester again pitches very well. I mean, that's the game that the Cubs end up winning on the Montero grand slam. I want to say when he left, the Cubs were up 3-1, and then Chapman ended up giving up some of the inherited runners. But
Mm-hmm.
a very good start. Game 5 in Los Angeles was unbelievable at a moment where the Cubs really needed it after a big win in Game 4. And then obviously Game 1 of the World Series was what it was. But Game 5 is probably his signature moment as a Cub, just willing the Cubs back to Cleveland.
Yeah.
And then Game 7, I mean, obviously there's the strange wild pitch, but the Cubs don't win that game without Lester.
Yeah. There's the weird end of that inning with the wild pitch, the throwing the ball, past first on the little dink. Not that he did that, but Ross
Right.
having to really get after it because of Lester's throwing issues a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, then Lester shut it down and carried them through the next couple innings that they needed him to. And I mean, just thinking about it now, how fun it was to watch Lester. He's got a death stare all game.
Mhm.
Sometimes you'll catch him mouthing bad words, but otherwise his face isn't that animated until he gets that third strikeout in an inning with a runner on third or something. And then the sort of like the Hulk Hogan flexing kind of
Right.
the fist coming in and screaming as he walks towards that foul line was so fun. I mean, it's one of the things that I like most about when Kerry Wood and Carlos Zambrano showed up with the Cubs was I was like, the Cubs have been too nice for too long. It's time for us to have some bullies on the team.
Stop being polite and start being real.
Start being real, we need a puck. We need some real worldies. And I think like Lester was that guy who's just going to like bully you around the field, whether he has his good stuff or not. But I mean, you just feel like if he's your pitcher, you have a better chance at winning than the other team does,
Mhm.
and even with his like bizarre holes in his game, the fact that he couldn't throw to first, and even if he was throwing to first on a live ball in play, he had to bounce it. And that, again, this is nice that he was bouncing it to his old friend and in some ways doppelganger, Anthony Rizzo over there at first, who can dig anything. But watching him work around that, and I mean, what a Jedi mind trick, too, from this guy who, outside of the one, the fun time picking off, it was it Pham? Was it Pham or Wong?
It's either Pham or Wong. Yeah, one
Yeah,
of them.
at first. Picking him off at first, and then I remember him getting Ryan Braun at third and staring him down off the field too. But the Jedi mind trick of this guy, just his swag and scary vibe, that he could just stare at you at first base. He can't throw it there, and
Mhm.
guys would very rarely run. Like
Yeah.
so many pitchers gave up more stolen bases because he just was looking at them mean. Like he could not.
Thank God he was a lefty.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's very true. Him as a righty would have been a different story, but I think that is a cool. That's kind of a cool thing that you just can't teach someone to have that kind of vibe or awareness or whatever you want to call it.
Right. And the other thing about him, I think that speaks to his competitiveness is that he was one of those guys where even if he went out and gave up 3 runs in the first inning, you were still like, I bet you he gets through 6 innings and
Mm-hmm.
just gives up these 3 runs.
Yeah,
Like a perfect example is, and I know the game didn't turn out as we had hoped, and you had the misfortune of being there, but the 1 game wild card against the Rockies,
yeah.
he comes out and immediately the Rockies are up 1-0, I think on the first 2 batters of the game, and then he just shuts it down.
Mm-hmm. Shuts it down and found a way to fight his way to
Mhm.
having enough stuff at the end of a very long year. And what's I think frequently overlooked is that's the we're talking the 2018 season there, right? So that is after 15, 16, and 17. I mean, he had another half a season of playoff innings on his arm at that point because the
Right.
Cubs made the Final Four 3 times in a row, and the World Series another time. So this guy, I mean, has to be gassed at that point, and he found enough to get him there. And that was a very good day for angry Jon Lester stomping off the field to a very loud Wrigley Field crowd. It's a shame we don't get one last chance with fans in the stadium to cheer him off the mound. But if baseball ever exists again, I'm sure we'll get a good old fashioned Jon Lester day in there pretty quick.
Yeah, and as much as it sucks that he was on the Cardinals to end his career, if there's anything I'm grateful for other than him getting his 200th win, it's that he did get to have that moment of a full Wrigley Field cheering for him. Because when he
Yes.
first came back with the Nationals, it was that kind of weird, like limited capacity. I don't know, there's 15,000 people for Schwarber and Lester returning. So it is cool that in that last weekend or second to last weekend of the season, that the Cubs got to give a proper send off to him, even if he wasn't pitching in that series.
Yeah, definitely. I want to read a fun quote from old Red Sox friend, fellow ornery fella John Lackey about Jon Lester, because Jon Lester has been talked about as for people who follow these things more closely than we do about like what are his chances of getting into the Hall of Fame. From what I read, and I've read a decent amount about it seems like the consensus is there's a good chance he gets in eventually. He's not going to get in on the first ballot, but especially seeing people who've gotten in the last few years, there's less than 10 left-handed pitchers in history who have the 200 wins, who have that many strikeouts, who have a comparable ERA. One of them, CC Sabathia, and then the 6 of them are in the Hall as is. So talking about the Hall of Fame, John Lackey said, John Lackey apparently has not been to Cooperstown. He said, I told my kids I'm not going until John gets in. That's when we're going to Cooperstown. I can't wait to be there. So that's pretty fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
And rest assured that he will not be in Cooperstown for a haircut.
He won't be in Cooperstown for a haircut. He might be banned immediately after he's there. But that's when he's going. David Ross said, if you're building a baseball player, as far as how they treat other people, what their goals are, how you want them to compete and act on and off the field, he's the model. Is beautiful. And then there's a nice little anecdote about Lester facing Lester was on the mound for the Cardinals, still fighting in a playoff race this year. And in the top of the first, the Brewers' Christian Yelich hit a 106-mile line drive off of Lester's calf for a single. Lester gets the next batter out. He's clearly hurting, and Mike Maddox came to him and said, "We have a reliever. You can come out." And Lester said, "My calf is nowhere near my heart. I'm not coming out," which is
unbelievable.
Which is a very funny phrase to say. It's like, yeah, we're not. I mean, are you saying? I mean. I think it's like, are you confusing heart in a metaphorical sense for a literal sense? But he's like, no, what is your problem? I'm not currently having a heart attack. My calf is down there, Mike, you idiot.
Be sure to check out Jon Lester's new clothing line, Calf Doesn't Measure Heart.
Calf ain't heart. Yeah. So, I mean, you can Google all you want about Jon Lester and find a bunch of fun anecdotes and stories about the guy. Now there's plenty to go around. And let me test this real quick. Tell me, hold your finger up if you can't hear this, but
Plane flight tonight. What's it, about 5-6 hours?
Who knows?
That's probably not going to be any fun.
Who cares? You know, it's always going to be, peaches and roses, or however the saying goes.
It's always going to be peaches and roses.
That's really cold. Who's doing that? I hate you.
Don't get that on the air.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I'll put it on the air. I don't care. And I did that on the camera. You see that?
Appreciate that.
I love our young guys. Our guys are so cocky that they don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. I apologize.
John, you've been in winning clubhouses before. What makes this winning clubhouse a special one?
Winning?
No response.
Winning. He's a long pause and then winning. That is Jon Lester. Just Google Jon Lester drunk. YouTube Jon Lester.
There is not an obvious shirt that says it's not all just peaches and roses. What are we doing here?
Yes, it is peaches and roses, or whatever the saying is. It is so relatable to me to have Jon Lester deep drunk. And that's, I think this is correct, Adam. That is after the Game 5 you were at in Washington,
yes.
Right? That Game 5 and seeing
bizarre, epic, incredibly long Game 5 of the 2017 NLDS. And a game that he did not pitch in, surprisingly.
Yeah, and maybe that's partially why he's that drunk. He
got started before the game, like they were doing in Boston.
Yeah, he was ready to go. But it was so rare to see Lester really let loose and get off, be in a way where he didn't have to be that like truly on fire, stone cold competitor. Watching him hang loose on local news in that way, slamming Bud Heavies, is a lot of fun. So thought that would be a fun one to play for y'all.
Yeah, and I mean it's been fun remembering his time with the Cubs, and I think it's probably safe to say it's been talked about a lot. It's got to be in the conversation for the greatest free agency signing in Chicago sports history, other than DeMar DeRozan, apparently.
Sure, yeah, DeRozan's climbing the ranks quickly. Yeah, I mean, you say him and Zobrist for the Cubs, right? As far as the championship Cubs go, and in a sense, I think Zobrist is your World Series MVP, of course, had that most important hit, but also it's hard to say if any of it happens if Jon Lester doesn't make the first move. He was our Han Solo who shot first. Jon Lester decided to come to the Cubs and be that first piece after they gave him that futuristic presentation where they were showing John Hayward in center field, I think, in their projections at that time, who was I think that him making that move really, in terms of like a butterfly effect, is probably the most important free agent signing the Cubs have ever had.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hope this is not what I'll be saying 50 years from now, but it is, and it's not even close. The greatest memories I have as a Cubs fan are
Mhm.
with him as a Cub.
Yeah, his signing truly kicked off what was the best Cubs era in history,
Yeah.
and that
With all due respect to Tinkers and Evers and Chance, we weren't around for that.
yeah, we weren't around for that. It was yeah, we're gonna count this as real baseball in terms of eras, and
We're talking post Titanic baseball here.
post Titanic, post Model T Ford, I think is a good way to go. Post integration in a more baseball important way, I suppose. But yeah, he kicked off the best era we've had, the best era in history of the team that is most important to us. So that's a big hell yeah. Thank you, number 34. Can't wait till he gets that number retired too, because
Yep.
that should happen too.
Miller Lights on us.
Yes, that's right. And as he left Chicago, he did the thank you, put a Miller Light on him, which
Yeah.
many
Tell you
people
what,
did.
if you go to a bar in Chicago tonight, tell him to put it on the McCaffrey tab. Kevin won't be there, but there's almost certainly someone with the last name McCaffrey. You'll probably get away with it.
Yeah, they'll be happy to help. They support the cause, I think, generally speaking.
Don't put it on the Mama Wallet tab. It's not going to happen.
No, they're gonna know that's bullshit. That's getting flagged immediately. Adam, any parting thoughts we didn't hit yet on our Jon Lester remembrance? And he's still alive. We're gonna see him again. He's gonna hit
Yes.
tanks in softball games. But yeah,
I don't know when it will be, but if it happens, I am hereby committing to making the trek to Cooperstown to see that happen.
me too. Myself and our friend Ken Schultz went when it was Andre Dawson's time, and if and when Lester gets in, that will probably be the big Cooperstown World Series champion Cubs reunion. So I'm 100% there if and when, let's say when that happens.
Do you have any parting thoughts?
I don't. Thanks, Jon Lester. Man, that was fun. I wish we could just rewind and do that all again. But boy, have you earned yourself another few nights like we just heard you having on YouTube in the Washington locker room right now. What a fucking career for Jon Lester.
Absolutely. And I have no way of confirming this, but I have a distinct feeling that Jon Lester has never groomed himself in his life. But if you are the sort of person who does, make sure to check out Manscaped and use promo code AwayGames. I don't take Jon Lester as a grooming sort of man.
No, he's not sweating that, I don't think. But yeah, man, it's happy trails to Jon Lester. Thanks for doing it. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram and all the things at Away Games Pod, and maybe we'll tweet out some fun Jon Lester links over the next couple of days.
Yeah, and God willing, we'll have some actual current baseball stuff to talk about because I am getting annoyed.
Me also. Thanks for listening, everybody. Catch you soon.